I, Dr. Rita Pratap, former head of the Department Drawing and Painting, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. I am going to speak on the history of Japanese painting. Module 14, Otoko-e or masculine painting. The robust action-filled narrative painting is known as Otoko-e. E-Bushi illustrates the glories of paradise but the frightful torments of hell. The Heiji Monogatari scroll describes the crucial battle of 1159 in the civil war between Minamoto, Genji and Taira Heiki clans. The 6 illustrated scrolls of the Kigon Enigear, widely considered to have been painted by Enichi Bojonen, the code of the warrior Bushido, was reflected in the vast production of war tales. Otoko-e or masculine painting. The robust action-filled narrative painting known as Otoko-e is in complete contrast to the static and emotion-filled Onna-e. Historical events are realistically depicted and uninhibited emotions are plainly shown in physical movement and facial expressions. Even the brushstrokes of landscapes are charged with action. Lines swell and shrink, and large dramatic and varied strokes are used simultaneously to create and to accent the pictorial composition. A particularly accomplished group of 3 painted scrolls known as the Shigisan Enji, the Flying Granary, detailed from the Shigisan Enji first scroll dated 1156 to 1180, depicts miracles performed by the devout 9th century monk Myron of Mount Shigi. In the section shown, the painter depicts a miracle worked by the golden bowl Myron used to send to be filled at the granary of a wealthy townsman. One day, the servants left it in the granary, whereupon the magic bowl slipped out, dipped under the building, and carried the entire store of rice back up to the mountain. The townsfolk can be seen rushing after it with wild gesticulation. The townfolk can be seen rushing after it with wild gesticulations. The vantage point is high. The only similarity with the tale of Genji scrolls and the narrative is continuous. The painting spreading over the entire scroll is a remarkable exploitation of the hand scroll format. The second and third scrolls each have 2 sections: written, narrative and painting. One wonders. The second and the third scrolls each have 2 sections: written narrative and painting. One wonders whether the scroll also has a calligraphic narrative, now lost. The paintings date from between 1156, when the palace shown was rebuilt, and 1100 AD, when it burned down. The anonymous artist would have been either Eishi or imperial court painters familiar with the obscure details of Buddhist iconography, or else E-Bushi. Instead of heavy opaque Tsukuri-e style, the Shingon scrolls show how the artist used color transparently and sparingly to highlight the dynamic brushwork. Another illustration from the Shigisan scrolls Scroll third shows Myron's sister, a nun, arriving at Todaiji and uses 6 exposures to show consecutive actions, a characteristic of narrative painting. In this illustration, reading from right to left, the nun is seen praying to the great Buddha, begging for a dream to lead her to her brother, the monk Myron. She steps out to sleep and dreams she is inside again and is told to go forward the southwest and the mountain overhung with purple clouds. She thanks the Buddha and is seen again at daybreak standing confidently on the steps of the Buddha hall, facing the southwest, ready to depart. In a 6th exposure, further left, she is on her way beneath the great steps. The great Buddha and its magnificent hall are depicted in their original proportions before they are burnt down in the Taira War of 1180. In the band Dayangon E. Kotoba, the lively brushwork of the Shishi-san scrolls is combined with gorgeous coloring, which places the work stylistically somewhere between the courtly Ona A. Genji scrolls and the lively Otoko A. Shishi-san. Although in band Denagon, some courtly interiors use thick Piscuri E coloring and some aristocratic features are abstractly depicted in the Hiki Meikagi Hana manner. In general, both facial expressions and gestures show clear emotions. Genji is a tale of social and emotional affairs, whereas Band Diagnagon is about political intrigue. It is a penetrating study of human motives and behavior and is a valuable source of information about manners and textile patterns. In the 12th century, the story is based on actual historical events of the 9th century. In the illustration Band Dianagon E. Kotaba, the children's quarrel. It is a hand scroll, second of the 3 scrolls, ink and colors on paper, late 12th century, multiple exposure technique showing consecutive actions anti-clockwise. It is used to depict the pivotal scenes of the children's quarrel. In the upper right, surrounded by curious townsfolk, the butler's son, wearing a short blue robe with polka dots, is having his hair pulled by the accountant's son. Next, in the upper center, one can see the accountant rushing to the rescue. Fists at the ready, he shields his son, below left, who sneers triumphantly as his father kicks the butler's son, sending him staggering to the left. Then, in the upper left, is the scene of an accountant's wife dragging her reluctant son home to be chastised. The architectural details give clues to the date and creator of the work. The accurate representation of the Casio Mom Gate, which was burned down in 1177 and not rebuilt, gives the latest possible date for the scroll. As the Seri Oden imperial residence is inaccurately drawn, we may assume either that the artist did not have access to the innermost recesses of the palace, or that the place shown was a temporary residence of the emperor. On the other hand, the artist has represented the metropolitan police force with an impressive and rigorous accuracy which suggests intimate familiarity with that agency. A unique splendid set of scrolls in the ink monochrome Haku-Bio tradition and in the Otoko-e manner has also survived from the period. A unique and splendid set of scrolls in the ink monochrome Haku-Bio tradition and in the Otoko-e manner has also survived from the period. The four scrolls are collectively known as Choju Giga, frolicking animals. The first two can be dated definitely from the first half of the 12th century. While the third and the fourth scrolls of lesser quality in brushwork and slightly different in content date from the middle 13th. The Choju Giga scrolls have no accompanying or even a separate text. They are the work of Buddhist monks and their often hilarious content has been the subject of much remark. The first scroll shows human games, rituals, and other activities performed by animals, often dressed as humans. The second scroll shows some 15 kinds of real or fantasy animals. The third scroll shows monks and laymen at play, then animals parodying their actions. The fourth, notably inferior scrolls continues the satirical theme. In the example from the first scroll, a monkey dressed as a monk is offering a peach branch before the Buddhist altar. His ceaseless chant is shown by wavy ink lines coming from his mouth. The Simeon offering is solemnly accepted by the corpulent frog, proudly seated on a lotus leaf with a giant banana leaf as his aureole. He is framed by leafless branches of a garnered tree, drawn in a few swelling ink strokes. Beyond the horizon, late autumnal grasses sway in the wind as three clerics, two foxes, and a monkey show various states of mortification and ennui. Nearby, a fox and a hare clutching Buddhist rosaries are also uttering incantations. Japanese religious education continued the practice ibushi, illustrated not only the glories of paradise but the frightful torments of hell. This type of didactic Buddhist painting is known as Rokudo-e, painting of the sixth paths, and its subject matter was drawn from the six regions of the impure land, in contrast to the Elysian pure land. Its purpose was to warn those who did not ceaselessly recite Amida's name that they were risking disease, deformity, and all the horrors of hell. Hungry ghosts from the Gaki Joshi scroll, Kawamoto version, ink colors on paper, late 12th century, and it is in the collection of National Museum, Tokyo. The starving ghosts inhabit a space in between hell and the realm of humans, among whom they can mingle invisibly. For their misspent lives, they suffer unappeasable hunger and thirst, which drives them to seek their food in graveyards and their water at holy wells from which they cannot drink. Graphically, the painting shows how attachment to worldly things in this life leads to similar bondage in the next. Mayo A in meditation. In 1206, the monastic reformer Cabin, aka Mayo Shannon, dated 1173 to 1232, re-established the forested mountain retreat Kozanzi, southwest of Kyoto, as an active part of the Kegon school of Buddhism, of which Todaiji in Nara was the center. Kozanji became known for its remarkable painting. Mayoi is said to have imported many Chinese Sung paintings, and they may have influenced the new Kozani painting style. The first were produced by Mayoi's favorite disciple, Enchi Bo Jonin. His famous and unusual portrait of Mayoi is a lasting tribute to the affection between the painter and his subject. It also introduces a new freshness and clarity in coloration. The abbot Mayo Shonin meditating is portrayed three-quarter face, sitting on a tree. His eyes are closed, his smile, wrinkles are emphasized, and his resolute, shaven. But bristly chin is depicted with striking realism. This outstanding portrait signals the new spiritual vigor of the Kamakura period, when aristocratic and aesthetic indulgence began to give way to a new sense of moral purpose and dynamism. This painting is dated to 13th century.
This is a long hanging scroll drawn in ink and lightly heightened with colors like the Kigon scrolls. Mayo is shown in solitary meditation in the mountains near his monastery. The striking thing about this portrait is the painter's profound insight into the natural scenery and wildlife surrounding the saintly monk. Though elements of Chinese style are present, the slender trees and the animals frolicking in the branches express the characteristically Japanese response to just as landscape as may still be seen today in the neighborhood of Kyoto, and his tie between man and nature as well be a reflection of the bond of sympathy linking Mayo and his favorite disciple painter of his portrait and of the great Kigon set of scrolls. Almost at the same date as the Kegon scroll, another set of illuminated scrolls executed this time not in a Buddhist but in a Shinto monastery gives expression to the new spirit of the Kamakura period in a much more dynamic style. This is Kitano 10 NG, which in 8 scrolls tells the story of Sugawara Mishizen, to whom the Kit no shrine at Kyoto was dedicated. Shinto, the nature religion of Japan, was an animistic cult in which all the living things in nature were regarded as spirits and ancestors were worshipped as deities. The Shinto religion was originally opposed to plastic and pictorial images, but in Heian period, under the influence of Buddhism, Shinto deities began to be represented in both painting and sculpture. In the 13th century, Shinto art was enriched with illuminated scrolls relating the miraculous lives of the founders and with Mia Mandaria giving a bird's eye view of the shrines regarded as the very symbol of the deities. One of the subjects most frequently represented was the life of Tianjin Sugawara Mishizen, 845 to 903. A statesman and poet venerated as a deity from the 10th century on, enjoyed the favor and confidence of the Emperor Uda. He had risen to the ministerial rank of Udaijin when his political rival Fujiwara Tokihira 871 to 909, head of the powerful Fujiwara clan, slandered and misrepresented him in the eyes of the new emperor Daigo, with the result that Mishizain was exiled to Kyushu, where he died of grief and rage. Shortly after his death, the imperial palace was repeatedly struck by the lightning, causing the death of several courtiers. Tokihira himself died prematurely. These events were interpreted as being due to the avenging spirit of Mishizain in its resentments against the emperor and the Fujiwara family. And to appease his soul, a shrine was built in 947 at Kitano, north of Kyoto, where he was deified under the name of Tenjin, god of heaven. Tenjin came in time to be regarded as the patron of scholars and men of letters, by virtue both his own genius as a poet and of the literary tradition that ran in the Sugawara family. The cult of Tenjin gained steadily in importance throughout the Heian period, and at the end of the 12th century, legends and began to be written about the origin of the shrine and the miracles wrought in behalf of the faithful. The oldest extant NG goes back to 1194, and this text expanded between 1213 and 1218 gave rise in 1219 to a monumental series of illuminated scrolls generally known by the name of Jokimon, version of Jokyu era, the year in which it was executed, or Kompen NG, fundamental NG. The size of these scrolls, 20 inches high, is larger than usual in this period because here, for the first and last time, paper was used in vertical sheets as the support for the paints. The first six scrolls tell with gusto the story of Mishizane's life, his precocious childhood, his brilliant career, his lonely exile, his tragic death, and his mysterious and terrible revenge. Giving free rein to his imagination in the last two scrolls, the artist represents the pilgrimage of a monk named Nishizo through the six paths leading from the hell to heaven. The concluding section of the NG text concerns the foundation of the temple and the benefits accorded to the faithful. But none of all this is illustrated by paintings. Still extant today, however, are some 15 leaves of uncolored drawings pasted on the back of the scroll and corresponding to a few scenes in the last part of the NG. These go to form the ninth scroll of the series. The superlative style of these illuminated scrolls is unique in Japanese painting. In each scene, the story unfolds with a fine dramatic sense of events recorded, and all the figures come vividly to life. Faces and gestures are convincingly realistic, but a little overdone, often to the point of burlesque. The brilliant colors are unfailing, harmonious, and full of charm. An example is of a hand scroll of the life of Sugawara Mishizen and the origin of the Shinto temple of Kitano Tenji. Gate of the Palace of Sugawara Koriyoshi. Opening scene of the first scroll, first half of the 13th century. Hand scroll, colors on paper, Kitano, Timan, Gu, Kyoto. The opening scene of the first scroll shows the entrance to the palace of the Sugawara Koriyoshi, the hero's father. A long prelude solemnly ushers us into the palace and leads up to the actual beginning of the story. The servants are seen bustling the carts of their masters outside the gate. In the opening scene of the first scroll, gate of the palace of Sugawara Koriyoshi is shown. Here, oxen released from the yoke gaze with an intent and symbolic expression. Another example is also a scene from the first scroll titled Child Mishizen and his father inside the palace, which opens on a park in springtime. The young Mishizen miraculously appears according to a popular belief he was not born but suddenly appeared and at astonishes his father with his preciosity. The bright colors worn by the two leading figures harmonize with the flowers in the garden. The deep blue waters of a stream winding through the park produce a fine decorative effect, while a broad band of dark brown, the roof of a corridor, forms the diagonal axis of the composition. Pigeons dot the roof with patches of color devoid of contours, adding a billith note to the balmy spring atmosphere of the scene. Elsewhere, the artist shows pigeons in different attitudes taken straight from nature, thus proving that despite the many exaggerations of his style, he had a sensitive and observant eye. Thus, these peaceful scenes of the first scroll gradually lead towards the tragic turn of the story and the final bolt of the lightning god. In the scroll, the highly realistic handling of faces, those of nobles above all, often bring to mind the art of realistic portraiture, Nisi A, developed at the beginning of the 13th century. Fujiwara Nobuzan, son of Takanobu, is portrayed three-quarter face sitting on a tree. His eyes are closed, his smile wrinkles are emphasized, and his resolute shaven but bristly chin is depicted with striking realism.
The NG founding history of the Kyogon school was produced at Kozanji at Mayo's request. The 6 illustrated scrolls of the Kyogon and Gere, widely considered to have been painted by Anchi Bo Jonin, the Korean patriarch of the school, Gisho and Gengyo, who introduced Kegon's teachings from Silla in the 7th century, are subjects of the narrative. The first 4 scrolls are devoted to Gisho, who studied Buddhism in China and was there adored by a beauty named Zemio, whom he converted to the Buddhist faith. As Gisho's boat was about to sail for Korea, Zemio threw her parting gift after it. To her surprise, the gift began to follow the boat as if alive. This inspired Zemio to plunge into the ocean herself, whereupon she was transformed into a large dragon and carried Gisho's boat on her back to Korea. Zemio thereafter was deified as a patron goddess of the Kegon school. Zemio transformed into a dragon. Detail from Kegon NG. Hand scrolls by Anichi Bo Jonin, early 13th century. In the details shown, the transformation has been accepted by the passengers who are listening as Gisho in the center expounds the law. As in the Mayo-e portrait, the painting is relaxed, the brushwork is clear and supple, and although every space is full, there is no sense of crowding. On the contrary, the soft color gradation as the sea turns from blue to white give a sense of spaciousness. There is none of the drama found in the assertive brushwork of Shingisan Enji, and none of the emotional intensity of the Genji scrolls. Instead, there is a sparkling clarity reflecting the shift in emphasis from emotion to spirituality.
War tales. These dramatic scenes follow one another uninterruptedly. In the 3rd scroll, Zemi and her attendants are shown on the shore in 3 different pictures. The alternation of this figure group with the ship leads up to the climax and produces an almost cinematographic effect. In all the scrolls, whether they deal with Grihur or Gengyo, one can feel the ties of sympathy binding the artist to the legendary figures he is depicting. The supple line work, whose accents are always natural, and the use of thinly coated colors which allow the underdrawing to show through are highly characteristic and sharply distinguish these works from those of an earlier day. Like the Shishizen scroll, here one can observe the new style, that of Kozanji studio, presumably influenced by Chinese painting of the Shung dynasty. Mayo Shonin in feet is known to have imported a large number of contemporary Chinese painting, and it was he who formed a studio of trained artists in his monastery. Zemi leaping into the sea in pursuit of Gisho. It is a scene from the 3rd scroll of the legend of Gisho, dated to early 13th century, attributed to Anchi-bo Jonin, colors on paper and at present in Kozanji, Kyoto. This series of 4 scrolls was presumably executed after 1223.
A later major category of picture hand scrolls tells of heroism and loyalty in battle. The illustrations are based on literary tales or historical chronicles of specific engagements. This development marks the start of military overlordship in Japan, where the Bakafu form of government began in 1185. With Minamoto Yoritomo's seizure of power and the establishment of his government in Kamakura. From then to the end of Tokugawa rule in 1868, interest in the code of the warrior Bushido was reflected in the vast production of war tales, both in literature and in all kinds of fine art, painting, album leaves, screens, and hanging scrolls, as well as narrative hand scrolls. Like a film, the hand scroll depicts action in sequence, one frame at a time. The pace at which the narrative takes the viewer's attention is intentionally directed. Each scroll painting has its own tempo, fast or slow, which engages the viewer to the extent of conditioning the speed at which he enrolls the scroll. In the Genji scroll, for instance, the pictorial sections are separate paintings interleaved with a continuous calligraphic narrative. This internal ona-e style makes the viewer pause at length over each frame to savor every detail of its meaning, whereas the otoko-e style of many war scrolls is more explicit with continuous action scenes and no textual interruption. The tales of Shishisan Enji, Ben, Dayangon, Kotoba, and the Kyogon Enji are examples of this type. With the growing interest in battle techniques, the detailed depiction of each stage in combat became a crucial feature of hand scroll painting. An early important set of scrolls, the Hagi Montagari, describes the crucial battle of 1159 in the civil war between Minamoto, Genji, and Taira Heiki clans. The scrolls are based on a novel of the same name written in 1220. Another novel about a similar conflict in the Hogan era, 1156, called the Hagen Montagari, was written in the same year. Both of these use a new plain spoken language where the battle scenes are described in a direct and epic manner. 3 scrolls from at least 15 describing the Hagi Wars have survived. The illustration shows the burning of the imperial palace at Sanjo in Kyoto by the rebel Minamoto forces who tried to seize power by capturing the emperor. The instigator of the revolt was Fujiwara Nobuyori, who had conspired with Minamoto no Yoshitomo. The coup was staged in December of 1159 and the retired emperor Go Shirakawa taken prisoner. The section illustrated shows the imperial palace in flames while Minamoto forces the emperor to board the cart waiting to take him to captivity. Other soldiers are shown charging on horseback, beheading imperial guards, and spearing royal retainers. Ladies weep helplessly or flee. The scene is packed with multiple actions, some of which are simultaneous, some sequential. It is far more complex conception that the crowd scenes in Bandagon or Shishigan NG were focus tended to be on a single action. The figures are grouped in triangle or in lozenges which culminate in a point. Single figures lead from each group to the next. Like its literature, Kamakura paintings was action-packed and spirited, dealing with real moments with no allusions to other times or themes. The fire, for example, is seen in several time lapses from its explosive outburst to the tongues of flames licking the adjoining roofs and then to the smoke-filled red clouds rising heavenwards, bringing a fallout of burning cinders. These last were made by flicking a paint charge brush across the wrist, covering the paper with red dots. At the center of the fire, the heat is most intense and the flames are painted sharp and straight, devouring the charred beams. Patronage has changed from the courtly Fujiwara to the martial Minamoto, and the arts sensitively reflect the shift in aesthetics.